Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this Manufacturing Marketing Group webinar. Choose a target market for better brand awareness. In this webinar, you'll learn about why choosing a target market is good for business growth and how to define a target market. Everyone who is registered will get a link to the recording and a copy for the slide deck. We'll send it to you via email in about 24 hours after our live broadcast. Everybody is in listen-only mode, meaning we have muted all attendees' phones. We do encourage you to ask questions as we go through the webinar. To ask a question or make a comment, just type it into the question window at the lower right of your screen. Type your question as it comes to you. You don't need to wait until the question portion. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll answer it via email after. Or feel free to contact us directly via our website, mmmatters.com. Again, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website on demand and via the follow-up email after the live broadcast. Also, if you're on Twitter, feel free to use the hashtag MFG Marketing and make sure to mention @MMIMatters, which can be found at the bottom of each slide. And now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. Bruce is the principal here at MMG. And has been on the ground in manufacturing, and sales for the past 25 years. He has been a field salesperson, a global marketing director, and is now an independent consultant focused on helping manufacturing organizations get their growth on with modern marketing strategy, tactics, tools, and teams. And by the way, I'm Cassidy, and I'll be your moderator today. Now over to Bruce.
Thank you, Cassidy. So today, folks, we're talking about choosing a target market for better brand awareness. And when I say better brand awareness, what I mean is you break through the noise, you get awareness that's going to cost you less budget, and you get to position your brand as the go-to expert. And when you have better brand awareness with those things, you're going to get benefits like more business, better profit, and so on. So the agenda today is we'll talk about those benefits. We'll talk about how you choose the market, how you know which markets to choose and perhaps which markets to rule out. We'll go through the profile. We'll talk about how you understand the audience with whether it's their pain, their problem, or their aspiration. And we'll talk about how you can define your most compelling value for that target market. And then we'll talk about what you do after. So you've chosen your target market, you've defined it, you've got all of your stakeholders on board. What's next? We'll have a section on that. And we'll have 2 Q&A sessions during the webinar. So as a question comes to mind, just type it into the question panel there. If you have a comment, just add that, or type that there, and we'll address those during the Q&A sessions. So let's get into it. The benefits. There's significant benefits to your business when you choose a target market. Now, just to define what I mean by choosing a target market, I'm not saying that once you choose this market, you have to say no to everybody else. You may want to do that, but it's not saying that's part of the strategy here. And I'm also not saying that when you choose a target market, you have to fire all your existing customers that don't fit that. I'm not saying that. We're saying when you choose a target market, that's where you focus your resources, you focus your budget, and you focus your benefits, and you talk to that target market. That's what we're talking about here. So what are the benefits to choosing a target market? Well, and why should you choose? Well, no company, I don't care how big they are, can afford to target everyone. It's just not efficient. Even huge companies like Coca-Cola or Apple, they don't target everybody, believe it or not. They've got a lot of money to spend, and it may appear that way, but they don't. They choose a target market. And if you're a small or medium-sized business, you can compete with the big guys when you choose a target market, because bigger companies, they might have several business segments and they may not be as focused as you can be. So you can chip away at their market share when you choose a specific target market and you know why you choose them. If you're looking for more awareness in your markets, more awareness of your brand, the way to get that is to differentiate. And when you choose a target market, you begin to differentiate your brand from those other competitors who are probably targeting everybody. And the idea here is you become the go-to expert for your target market. So whatever your offering is, whether it's a service or a product, you become the expert for solving a particular problem. And when you're the expert, you get the call. You get the first shot at the business, and believe it or not, even get their business at a little bit higher price. That's the big power of the target market. You get paid more, you get more profit, you get more referrals, and your company grows faster. There are some common misconceptions that I hear all the time when I talk to manufacturers and anyone in business really. And one of the misconceptions is that, hey, isn't more prospects better than fewer prospects? Not true. And we'll talk more about that here in the reasons and when we choose a target market. I'll hear owners of companies say, excuse me, I want to do business with anyone interested in my product or company. And that's fine, but we're saying focus your resources and your assets and your people on a target market. If someone else happens to find you and it's a good fit and you want to do business with them, absolutely do business with them. But your resources for go-to-market need to be focused. And then I hear folks say, well, if I choose a target market, I'll have to turn away business. And that's not necessarily true. When you choose a target market, you're choosing a market where you're most efficient, where you're most valued. So it may be the case where you say, I'm choosing this target market and I'm turning away all other business. That may be what you decide. Maybe after a certain amount of time, you'll choose that. But you don't have to do that. If I choose a target, my competition will take advantage of the void. That may be okay, believe it or not, because if you choose a target market where you're most effective, you make more profit, you sell more products or services, so what? Maybe you weren't that effective in that void that your competition moves into. And maybe they're going to move into a void and add it on to their whole other target markets and fail. So it's okay. You got to make that choice, and it can be scary, especially for your owners and CEOs and the presidents out there, because it feels like you're shutting off an income stream, or it feels like you're restricting your business, but you're not. Think about your total available market. In this target, it's going to be plenty big enough for you to grow much faster and much better than if you have a broad market. Here's an example, BMW, right? This car here on the slide, maybe that's a $95,000 BMW. So you buy a brand new BMW, something happens, the engine starts ticking, and pretend you don't have a warranty. So who are you going to take it to? Are you going to take it to the mechanic down on the corner who services all kinds of cars? Or are you going to take it to the BMW specialist who's trained in your car? I think you're going to take it to the specialist because they're the go-to expert. They know everything there is to know about that car. They've got all the right equipment. BMW has proven to be the go-to expert for their own cars. Might seem obvious, but it's a good analogy. Heck, these BMW cars, these new ones, they'll open up the hood and they'll say, don't do anything under this hood except add windshield washer fluid. Seriously, that's what they tell you. there's not even a dipstick under the hood for the oil. So that's the kind of specialty that BMW has. That's the kind of specialty you can have in your target market. You're going to know how to solve the audience problems better than anybody. So how do you choose a target market? Well, it's a very intricate and detailed process, but there's some basic steps we can go over today. Best place to start is with your current clients. Take a look at your current clients and look for common characteristics and interests of those clients that you like working with and that are profitable. If you have a certain group of clients, whether it's by business size, for example, or could even be geography, or it could be industry, and you just don't make money on them or you don't like working with them, that would be one to exclude. So take a look at your current clients and then make a hypothesis. Say, okay, based on our current client mix and what we know about our market that we're currently servicing, we think that this definition, this profile, etc., would be best, and then go out and prove it. Now, you may prove it to be not true, and that's okay, because you got to find that target market that's best. And your hypothesis may be wrong, and that's okay, because you're going to prove that it's the best fit for your company. And the next thing you want to do is take a look at your competition. Are they focusing on a niche? And do they seem to be successful? Maybe there's a void. Maybe your competition is a big company and there's a void that they're missing that you can step into and start taking business away from this big competitor. And finally, who can you efficiently reach with your message? This is important. I've seen manufacturers who go out and choose a target market, but it's hard to reach them because they don't group together or they don't congregate in a conference or they don't go to a trade journal, online trade journal website to get their information. Your audience, your market that you choose has to congregate somewhere so you can efficiently reach them with your message. And if you're not sure, make the hypothesis, test your theory, and prove it right or wrong. You may have to test a couple of different markets, and that's okay. And remember, I'm not saying that once you choose a target market, you're firing all your clients who don't fit, or you're not continuing your existing marketing strategy. You are going to do that. This is something to gradually bring into your business. So make sure that you do choose the right one. So let's talk about the definition of the market. There's basically 6 parts of the definition. One is the profile, and we'll go through each of these here in a second. The profile, where do they congregate? Where are they? Because you have to know where they are so you can reach them. What do they care about? What's important to them? Where and how do they get information? This goes along with how you can reach them. How do they buy? Do they buy like most of us buy things today and start with a search to solve their problem and then gradually move into an engagement with a salesperson? Or do they go into the showroom, look at the BMWs and pick one out? There's probably a common characteristic for your market. And finally, what's their problem? This is most important. What is their problem that you can solve? It's very important. Think about it with an audience focus. So profile, what is the profile? This is typically going to be things like an industry or a vertical, sometimes it's called. Could be geography, could be company size, could be an industry that uses a certain technology, or it could be an ownership type, public or private or nonprofit, for example. Doesn't have to be these categories, but these are usually a pretty good way to define the profile in your audience. For example, let's say that you manufacture a monitoring system for electronics companies. monitoring temperature, humidity, things like that for controlled environments. So your industry might be electronics companies. Now, even that might be too broad. You might even define it even narrower and say electronic semiconductor manufacturers. But basically, you're going to choose an industry here. Then geography, you could say our target market is the United States. Our target market is the state of California, or it could be even a metropolitan area if you're a company, a smaller company. Geography, again, consider if we choose United States, do we have the resources to reach that market with a message, even if it's a vertical industry? Ask that question. Many companies say, our market is global. We're a global company. That's great. Can any company realistically reach everybody on the globe? It takes a lot of money. Even companies, as I mentioned, like Coca-Cola, sure, they're all over the globe, but they do make choices about where to put their message and which audiences to engage with. Company size could be employees, 50 to 100 employees, for example, or $1 billion or more in revenue, or you could say we want to deal with companies that have $10 million to $100 million in revenue because they're the best fit for us. Technology, you could say all electronics companies that have a clean room. And when you make a choice like that, ask yourselves, can I find electronic companies that have clean rooms? Is that information available? Or will you have to go out and actively collect that information? But that's an example. You could say, for example, here at MMG, we look for manufacturing companies who use HubSpot as a technology. That's one of our target markets. Ownership type, again, public, private, nonprofit. That may or may not be a choice you make. This list here is not all-inclusive. It's not meant to be, these are the 5 pieces of the profile, but you have to look at your company and who you do business with, who you want to do business with, how can you define them? And note here, we're not talking about demographics like income and, personal income or male or female or age ranges. Typically, that doesn't come into play for manufacturing B2B companies. If it does, and that's how you define your profile, if you're selling to end users or people out there, you may want to bring that into your profile. What is their pain, problem, or aspiration? This is really important when you choose your target market. And if you've seen some of our other webinars, we always say focus on the audience. Don't think about here's my product, here's the features and benefits, here's our company, here's why you should do business with us. That's for later down in the sales funnel towards the end of the buying process. We're talking about awareness, brand awareness, and how to get better brand awareness. And to do that, you don't pitch your product. We did a whole webinar on product pitching and why it doesn't work for top of the funnel for awareness. You can check it out on our website. When you want to engage with a target market and that audience, you've got to know what their problem is. You've got to know why they want to hear from you. That's how you break through the noise. Can you help them to be more efficient? Can you help them to be more profitable? Can you help them to be better at their profession? Can you make their job a little easier? And note that I'm always saying, how can you help the audience? That's the key. Don't think about how your product is the best or how your company is the best. Think about the audience. How can you help them? So you really have to get to know your audience. Don't just after the profile, which is actually the easy part, then find out what's their pain. What problem do they struggle with every day? Or what's their aspiration? What do they want to become? And how can you help them? So you have to do the research into your chosen target market, as we mentioned earlier. Research might be a primary market research, might be combination of talking to your clients, your existing clients that fit this profile you're researching, or even people out there who aren't your clients. Maybe it's your competitors' clients, and learn what their problem is. The pain point, for example, let's say you're that company who's targeting electronics companies with clean rooms, electronics manufacturing with clean rooms. And because your company makes particle counters, so that's the example we'll use. And you find out that electronics manufacturing companies that have clean rooms, a pain point and a problem that they struggle with is understanding and complying with ISO standards for clean rooms. And if you're a particle counter company, you probably think, well, that's an easy one, everybody knows that. But they probably don't. Let's say they really struggle with understanding how to comply with these standards, and further, how to prove compliance to their customers or to their regulators. That's a pain point, and you, as a particle counter manufacturer, you happen to have experts on staff who know everything there is to know about ISO standards for clean rooms and how to comply and report. That's the great fit. That would be a pain or problem you could use to help your audience and to prove your expertise and your credibility. Now, I'd like to point out there's a handout in the handout section of your control panel. It's the sweet spot worksheet. And this is a great little worksheet to actually answer this question about the pain and the problem, and then also combine it with your expertise. Because that's the other point. You have to have authentic expertise. Doesn't necessarily have to be unique, but it needs to be authentic. And when I say authentic, it means you can't fake it. You've got to have experts who really understand this expertise. For example, the ISO standards. You can't just pick that and then go do some research on the internet and share a couple of articles. It's not enough. You can purchase it. If you find a really great pain point in the target market that you can reach and you don't have the expertise, you can hire somebody. Hire a PhD in whatever that pain point is, or hire somebody who's been in the business and has the expertise. Someone with a following who's well known is fantastic if you can find that. So you need to have that authentic expertise. And does it have to be unique? Doesn't have to be unique. Because frankly, most of the competitors out there, if you start looking at this, they aren't sharing this expertise. Some are, maybe 10 or 15% of manufacturers do this. So it doesn't have to be unique. But if somebody else is also sharing the expertise, you just have to be better at it. You have to have a better outreach plan, a better inbound plan. You have to be better at it than they are. Eventually, folks, everyone is going to be doing this type of marketing, and it'll be a level playing field again. But right now, this type of marketing, sharing expertise, sharing knowledge, it's pretty unique in manufacturing. So it's a great opportunity to really take that market share. So go ahead and download that Sweet Spot Topic Workshop. I think you'll find that useful. It's a Venn diagram with the pain point and problem on one side, your expertise on the other, and the intersection of that is going to be the topic that you're going to talk to your target market about. Can you reach them? Can you reach your market efficiently? I mentioned this earlier. This is important. When you're researching your target market, finding out their pain and their problem, at the same time, you should be figuring out, does this audience, do the people who make up your target market, do they congregate someplace? Because if they don't congregate, either physically, like at a conference or something, or virtually at a certain website, then you're not going to be able to reach them efficiently. So when you're choosing your target market, ask the question, is there a trade journal? Is there some type of an association? Is there a group online that has the audience I want to get in front of? For example, there's a group called Global Spec. Some of you may have heard of Global Spec. They aggregate companies that sell industrial products and companies that buy industrial products. They have a database of about 8 million people all over the world. And they have very niche newsletters that go to people who are in certain specific vertical industries, or sometimes that are a certain application like HVAC. You can get in front of that audience. You have to buy it, of course. You buy an ad, but you can do it efficiently in front of a lot of people. So it's important. Can you reach them? Social media, great example. Do they go use a certain social media tool? LinkedIn is the primary business-to-business social media tool. Could you reach your target market on LinkedIn? And actually, for industrial and manufacturing companies, that's a great tool. You can get in front of a very specific audience by industry, by geography, by title, by seniority, by, what's the other one? Geography, title, seniority. Anyways, you can really choose a very specific group of people that could match your target market. What about Facebook? People say there's 2 billion people on Facebook. Should my manufacturing company be on Facebook? That's a tough one. In the past, I would always say no. For B2B, manufacturing probably doesn't make sense, because when you're on Facebook, even if it's somebody from your target market, they're probably not getting business information. But I think that may be changing. I think it may be worth investigating Facebook for business to business, because everything is sort of, and the social media is sort of fusing together, if you will. And then look at how do they buy what you produce. That'll be a clue about how you can reach them. Are they starting their purchasing process by doing a search on Google? If that's the case, then you may be able to reach them efficiently with targeted keywords or targeted content that shows up in organic search, so search engine optimization, or pay-per-click. So that's the question, can you reach them efficiently? There's a few ideas to think about. Okay, that brings us to our Q&A session. If you have a question so far, go ahead and type it in to the question panel. And I think we had a few that came in. Cassidy, do we have some questions from the audience?
We do have a couple questions. One of our questions is from Neil. He's wondering, would it be a good idea to do a survey to learn more about the market pain points?
Yeah, that's a good idea. A survey of, first question comes to mind is, who would you survey? Would you survey your existing clients? That's a good idea. Would you survey a third-party external market? Sure. And when you ask those survey questions, you're probing for things like we've talked about here today. What are the pain points? What are the problems? Where do you get your information? How do you get your information? There's actually been a couple of good surveys put out around these topics, around if you sell to engineers. And if you sell to engineers, there's several surveys out there that show, how does an engineer like to get information? What kind of social media do they participate in? Maybe it's a bit of a stereotype, but there's the information's out there. Any other questions, Cassidy?
Yep, we have one question from Rachel. And Rachel's wondering, should I limit the geography of a target market?
This is a question you'll have to answer internally with your stakeholders, and it'll depend on your particular business. I always recommend going with a smaller niche or a smaller area than a larger area. I was on a webinar myself the other day listening, and he was talking about the amount of GDP per state in the US compared to other countries. And the GDP for California, I don't remember the number now, but it was something like 200 billion, let's say it was. And then the GDP of another country he mentioned was 200 billion. So the question is, well, and he said, have you got California yet? So get something smaller before you go to something larger, like a country that speaks a different language or something. Let's take one more question, Cassidy, and then we'll go into the what's next section.
Okay, this question's from Sam, and Sam's wondering, Do I need to fire my existing customers if they don't fit our target market?
It probably not. That's a big fear. So if you're not the CEO or president and you go to that person and say, hey, I just went to this great webinar and I think we should segment our market and say we're going to fire all our clients that don't fit it, you're going to get kicked out of his office. So, but on the other hand, maybe you've got a segment of customers you're currently working with who aren't profitable or take a lot of time to manage and they're just not a good fit. Maybe you will fire them. So you'll have to answer that question, but typically you don't have to do that. And I don't want you to do that because especially if it significantly cuts into your income or your revenue. Okay, thanks for those questions, folks. Let's go ahead and talk about what's next. So you've chosen your target market. You've answered all the questions. You know what their pain point is. You know how you can help them. You've got experts on staff who can solve these problems. You know where they are. You know how you can reach them. So what's next? I would say before I even go into this section, I recommend creating a proper marketing plan. And you might say, well, what's a proper marketing plan? A proper marketing plan even goes through the audience definition or the market definition phase. And it just so happens on our handout section, there's a Microsoft Word template for a marketing plan. I highly recommend downloading that and using that to build your marketing plan. It'll answer all the critical and important questions. But if you say, well, I don't want to do a marketing plan, which is maybe your position, and that's okay. I understand that. Marketing plan takes a lot of time. If you don't do a full plan, then here are the points, the high points that you should complete after you've defined that target market. One is messaging. You want to define a very tight positioning statement, then a value proposition, and then you want to work out your messaging framework. And this should all be supported by the research that you did for your target market previously. Positioning statement and value proposition are different. A positioning statement is an internal facing statement that helps everybody focus on the market. Sandbox means where you play so you can tell your audience what you do and they'll understand it, why you're different, and what's the payoff. That's an internal document. Then you take that information and you build your customer facing value proposition. If you need help with that, we also have a template you can download in the handout section. It's a PowerPoint template where you can fill this out yourself. Then you have to think about the content. And this is you may have to develop new content that supports that sweet spot topic that you came up with earlier, the intersection of the audience needs or pain and your expertise. You may have to build some content to share with this maybe a new target market, and it has to support those needs. A good way to get started with developing content is to do a content audit. Learn what's existing at your company. Chances are, if you're a manufacturer, you've got a lot of content about your product, a lot of content about your company, but you don't have much content about this pain point that you just discovered. If you have some, maybe you find it, pull it out of the archives, you can repurpose it. That's the easy way. If you have to create new content, a little bit harder, but well worth it. I guarantee that. Create the content, could be in the form of an ebook, could be a webinar, could be an infographic, could be an email nurturing series with offering advice and how to solve problems. Got to create that content. And when you do, you get the secret formula. TOMA, which is top of mind awareness, plus credibility, plus reciprocity. That's the position you want to get to in your target market. You want to come to mind first. When they're ready to buy what you're offering, what you're making, what your service, when they're ready to buy that, you want to be top of mind. And they're going to think, oh yeah, ABC company, they're the experts. in this particular area, and they've been sharing this great information with me, so they give credibility, and they've been nicely sharing information, so I want to reciprocate. I want to at least give them the first shot and the best shot at getting my business. That's the position you want to get to in your target market. And then you've got to build your strategy. Don't just wing it or shoot from the hip. Write down, work with your stakeholders, work with your executive team, and build a marketing strategy for that target market. This is where you're going to focus. Focus your resources, focus your people, focus your efforts on this target market. This is the whole crux of choosing a target market, because you can be more efficient. You can get that position that we just talked about in the target market. But you have to have a strategy. It's got to be an inbound strategy where you're attracting people who are looking for a certain solution, and an outbound or an advertising strategy. You're going to put your message about, hey, here's something that can help you to be better, or hey, here's something that can help you solve this problem. That's how you break through the noise. You're not advertising your products, you're not advertising your company, you're advertising that you're the solution provider for that particular problem. And I do recommend inbound strategy and outbound strategy. And again, this is in the marketing plan template that I mentioned earlier. If you need help with marketing strategy, here's the shameless self-promotion. MMG can help you build that strategy and help you with the target market as well. And a marketing plan, for that matter. Build your marketing plan. I'm coming back around to this. That marketing plan template walks you nicely through a framework, a step-by-step framework that helps you go through these steps in choosing a target market and then executing afterwards. So takeaways, folks. Here's my takeaways. Ask the question, would it benefit my company to focus on a target market? Based on what we talked about here, ask that question of yourselves or your team or your stakeholders, and bring up some of the benefits we talked about today. And then another question, are you ready to make the hard choices? Are you ready to say, we're going to focus on this target market with our marketing resources and our sales resources, and we're not going to focus on other markets? That could be a hard choice to make, and it could be a hard sell to make to your leadership, but it does pay off. I've seen it pay off many times. Consider the marketing plan template as your framework. Be sure to think about your distribution and reach. And I'm coming back to the idea that you have to be able to reach, to be efficient, you have to reach the target market. So they have to congregate someplace, physically or virtually. And no, you don't have to fire all your customers that don't fit. If that would be a significant cut to your revenue, a lot of times people say, I'm just not going to do a target market because I'd have to fire all my customers. You don't have to fire them. Keep them. But again, focus your resources going forward on a target market. So you can be the big fish in that pond. That's really what it comes down to. You can always present this to your leadership as a pilot program. That's usually pretty effective to get buy-in from leadership. Say, I've got a new idea. Here's what it is. I want to try a pilot program. I want to test it. They'll usually let you do that if you have a tough case. Pick a start date and commit to it. Test it. Explore it. Do it. It'll pay off. Okay, any more? We have one last Q&A session here, and then we'll be wrapping up. I've got a special offer for the audience, for the folks who showed up today. And Cassidy, do we have any other questions?
If we have one question from Allison. She's wondering, is a target market the same thing as a buyer personas? Where do buyer personas come into play?
That's a good question. I thought that would probably come up today. And there is a difference. A target market is a market where you intend to address, as we've been discussing today. Within that target market, you may or may not want to define certain people and their roles. For example, you choose electronics companies in the state of California that have clean rooms. You may want to choose a persona, for example, of the quality control director or the clean room manager. I don't know what they are, but you may want to define a particular person and their role and then their real particular pain points and problems. It would depend on your industry. You don't have to do that. Maybe it's enough to just get in front of your target market as a group and let that audience, those personas, sort of self-select. But other companies do like the persona idea. So it's two levels, target market and then people within that target market. Those are your personas. I think that's about all the time we have for questions. So folks, I do want to make a special offer. Actually, Cassidy, I think you were going to make the offer.
I was.
And you will.
I will. Well, we have a special offer today for everybody who attended. We have half off our target audience workshop. You just have to go to this website, mmmatters.com/audience, and fill out the form. Make sure to mention this webinar because it's only for the people who attended, not for the registrants. And once you fill out that form and tell us a little bit about yourself, we'll send you more information about the workshop.
Thanks, Cassidy. Sounds like a great offer. And folks, it is.
I think so.
It's really beneficial to have somebody guide you through this if you haven't been through it before. And again, don't forget about the handouts. Download that marketing plan template. There's the messaging framework. Oh, and then there's also the sweet spot topic. Feel free to use those as much as you want. So thanks, everyone. That'll conclude our webinar. Thank you very much for spending time with us today. Hope you found this useful. If you have questions, shoot me an email, and I'd be glad to answer your questions. And check out our next webinar, which will be at the end of April, which will be about a two-stage funnel and why that's beneficial. Thanks, Cassidy.
Thanks, everybody.